Hey everybody, this is Bullet. Well, as you all know, I had to re-enter into the workforce. So this is going to be a little bit about re-entering the workforce, but mainly it's going to be a lot about private security. I started out getting a job that would work best for me, at least what I thought would work best for me, thus becoming an armed courier. I thought that would be pretty good because it was a courier, I wouldn't have to run around, I'd just be driving. Well, that didn't exactly quite work out the way I was wanting it to. I was having to drive an hour and a half every day, one way, for $3.50 or $13.50 an hour. That wasn't the best for me. I was literally spending half my paycheck on gas. Plus the fact that I found that I was driving all day on pain meds. I would have to take my pain meds because sitting in the car all day, or the van we drove all day, it just caused me a lot of problems with my leg, my back. So I was having to take my pain meds. So there I am running around in a company vehicle carrying lots of money on pain meds, and that just didn't work out good for me. But I eventually found a job that was 20 minutes from my house working private security. Thought, okay, this will work. It was pretty good pay. It was decent pay for this area that I live in, but it was for a company, and it was 20 minutes from my house. But this company was charging, or you rented your uniform. This is the problem I ran into doing private security. I was having to go to work for companies. And for some people, y'all may not know, private security companies, they charge you for your uniform, charge you to have your license put over into their company. They charge you as much as they can for whatever. This one private security company was requiring you to wear a certain uniform. All security guard companies require a uniform. And the requirement for the uniform, you paid for, you actually rented. Once you were done with that company, if you didn't stay with them, found a better company or whatever, you had to return your uniform, but you didn't get your money back. And if you did get their, well, you had to get their uniforms. It wasn't if you, but if you got their uniforms, you also had to pay to have them dry cleaned when you returned them. If not, they would deduct the price out of your last paycheck. All that did not sit well with me. They were issuing me uniform. They told me I had to have shirt, pants. That's all fine and dandy. I had to supply my own boots, which I don't know of any company that buys your footwear because most people, they have different things they want to wear for their feet. So, but I had my own boots, I had my own belt, but the pants they were wanting me to take was their pants. The pants were the exact same pants I had from both sheriff's departments I worked for. So I was like, hey, I don't need them. And they were like, yeah, you do. It's required you get our pants. So I had to rent those pants. Plus, if I had to do any alterations to them, that come out of my pocket, and then I would have to pay them for altering their pants when I turned them in because they were altered to fit me. And then the jacket, I don't wear coats. I don't know, some of y'all don't know me. I don't wear coats in the wintertime. It doesn't get that cold to me in Texas. But they were forcing me to get a coat, which I kept telling them I would not wear. I don't want to pay for it. I'm not going to wear it. I don't wear coats. But they forced me to, and their policy even says in their policy I could wear a plain black hat. They were forcing me to get a hat, their hat. It was a plain hat that said security on it. Didn't have their logo, didn't have their name, just security. So I had to get that, even though I kept telling them, no, I've got a hat. It's a plain black hat, just like the policy says I can wear. Well, that wasn't working for them. They wanted more money. So I had to pay for my uniforms, and I had to buy parts of my uniforms I didn't want. Now here's the other one. If I decided to leave this company, I would have to pay to get the dry cleaning done. Either way, I was going to pay for it. It's either going to come out of my check or I'm going to pay for the dry clean. Either way, I was going to pay for it. And I had to turn it back in. If I left without notice, then I would get dropped down to minimum wage. Most security guard companies do that. If you leave without giving them a 2 weeks notice, you'll end up getting dropped down to minimum wage. So here I am. I left one security guard company, going to another, and just the thought of working private security it was eating me alive. I don't agree with private security companies. It's not that I don't believe in security guards. Security guards, that's a good concept. That's great. You're able to hire someone to mainly watch your area and provide security for your area. The problem I have is you have these security guard companies that want to pay you, and they want you to give them back money. And that just doesn't sit well with me. And plus the licensing. When I went to work for that courier company, I had to get my level 2 back. I was supposed to have gotten my level 3, but I never did make it that far, and I told them, I don't want to do that. Got my level 2. I had to have my level 2. To work in private security, you have to be licensed. Okay, the level 2 class, I had to take because my level 2 expired. It was expired for 3 or 4 years now. I had to go back through the class to get it re-upped. I was supposed to take a class online, which was approximately 2 to 3 hours, and then take a test. That's it. I signed up for the class, and as soon as I got approved through the course coordinator or whatever to take the class, I went in, didn't even take the class, went straight to the test, took the test, passed it with flying colors, and that was it. And I know a lot of you are probably think, well, you worked in law enforcement, you should pass it, blah, blah. That's not the point. The point is, it's a 2 to 3 hour class, and you take a test, and that's it. You go on, you watch a few videos, you read a little bit, and you take a little 25 question test, and you're an officer, a security guard. To get armed, you have to take a 40-hour class, and the majority of the 40-hour class is gun safety, how to clean the gun, and then you listen to a bunch of stories about officers who used to be in law enforcement and carrying their gun. You go to the range, you pop off a few rounds, hit a target, pass that, take a 50, sometimes depending on the course or the company, you might take 100 questions, maybe, and that's it. After that, you got a level 3 license, and you're now armed. You're now able to run around in a security guard uniform, which looks a lot like law enforcement, and you're armed. 90% of them do not even know the law when it comes to them. Those that do know the law, those are the ones that are the good ones. Those that do know the law are probably either on their way to law enforcement and they're just working security until they get the money to take the class, or until they can get hired on with the department that'll put them through the class, or those that have already retired from law enforcement and they're gotten into private security just to supplement their income. You very rarely do you have them in between that are any good, that are going to stay for long periods of time, which leads me to the next deal about private security. The pay. The weekly pay, the scheduling. Okay, unarmed security, the majority of the unarmed security I found was $13.50 an hour. There was anywhere from 13, maybe you might get lucky and find some that are 15. The company I was going to work for was 19 an hour, which that's pretty good for this area, like I said, but they were only going to work me 32 hours a week because they're not trying to pay that overtime. They're not trying to pay full term. So it was 32 hours a week. Now, like I said, though, most of the security guard companies I saw was anywhere from 13 to 15 an hour, and that's just not good money. Now, the licensing part, as I told you about the licensing for the level 2 and for the level 3. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, I think security guard companies should be run through TCO, not turning them into TCO officers, not turning them into cops, but I think TCO should be in charge of the licensing, not the Texas Department of Public Safety, not DPS. DPS already has a lot on their plate, so a lot of the times guards, they slip through, they get through, they're not. And the hiring process for the security guards, you fill out a 1-page, maybe a 2-page application, and that's it. And you fill out a tax. A lot of the times you thought that you're already hired. If you walk in and say, hey, are y'all hiring? They've already hired you right there on the spot. They do a little minor background check, minor, and I do mean minor. They run it through some public data place that you can go to. Anybody can do it. They pay like $50 a month or whatever, $15 a month, and they can get public data. And that's how they get a lot of their background checks. They don't have a TCO or a PHS. They don't make them fill out a PHS. They don't make them do any of that. And that's where I seem to run into a lot of my problems. If we were to license security guards, just like TCO does, run them through a PHS, they have to do a massive background check, and then have to go through training, actual training to be a security guard. That would weed out a lot of the bad guards. That would weed out the ones that bounce from company to company, that come in, that are just working security because they're lazy. They don't want to do anything else, and security is a good job that you don't really have to do nothing. You come in, a lot of places you go in, you go to work, you don't have to make any rounds. If they do make you make rounds, half the time they're not even regulated. They don't check. The site supervisors never come out there. The supervisor for the guard company never come out there. And then most of your supervisors that work private security, if they do have to go post to post, half the time they're out there just running around, not really even paying attention, not even going from post to post. They're out there just running around or sleeping behind a building somewhere. Or they're having to be stuck on post because a guard didn't show up for work. No call, no show, just didn't even show up. And they sometimes get arrested. I was a captain with a guard company for about a year, a little over a year actually, and I got a phone call that one of my officers had gotten arrested. I was like, "Are you serious?" He was asleep in his car, passed out, not asleep, passed out in his car, had smoked a whole bunch of weed, was passed out, and was an armed officer. He was found by the police department, and they arrested him on the spot, took him to jail, and I had to go get his uniform. I was like, good Lord. When I was with that company, I was trying to talk them into having officers fill out a PHS, or at least an application that was the equivalent of a PHS. They just wouldn't do it. And I kept trying to get them, like, hey, we can get them hooked up where they can take some TCO classes and make our patrol officers a little bit more professional. They wouldn't do it. So we just kept butting heads on that. But that's just me. I think if we were to actually provide the security guards with a more professional attitude, more professional persona, more professional training, then we would get better quality officers. As it is right now, we have second rate, and I hate to say it, but second rate security guards running around out there that are just running around armed, have no idea about their laws that pertain to them doing private security. You get a lot. That's where you come into a lot of problems where you have officers out there thinking that they're cops because they really don't have that training. They just go through this little 40-hour class, talk about gun safety, don't look down the barrel, don't point the gun at nobody, keep your finger off the trigger unless you're going to shoot. We really don't want you to shoot. Don't draw your weapon. And take them to the gun range to fire off a few rounds at a target, and there you go. Here's your license to go carry out in public now. Oh, and by the way, here's a uniform, make you look just like a cop. So they get out there, and they're left to their own vice, and then they start thinking that they're cops. And that's where we run into a lot of problems. It's poor training, poor supervision from the guard company itself, and they just hire anybody off the street. The most stringent thing that they look for when they're hiring is, do you have a clear background, and can you walk and talk, and do you have a driver's license? And I'm telling you, and half the time you don't even have to have a clear background. I worked for one company that wasn't a supervisor with them. Worked for one company, and they hired a guy that had been arrested for felony assault, and granted, the charges were dropped, but he has still been arrested for felony assault with a weapon, and they were going to bring him in, and they hired him, and they were having to get a bunch of paperwork done to see if they could get him licensed. It was going to be up to DPS. Now I'm thinking, if it was TCO, he wouldn't have made it. He wouldn't have gotten in. There's no way he would have gotten in. But that, that's the quality that we're getting at. And nowadays, people with fast food are making way more than security guards. And don't get me wrong, I'm not downing on people that work fast. Fast food is a hard job, but they're making more than security guards. So we're getting the less of the less. We're getting the worst. They're coming in, half of them are strung out. Most of them, you don't even have to take a drug test with the companies anymore. I didn't even have to take a drug test with either one of the companies I went to work for. None. But that's just me. I think we should pay the guards a good wage, make them go through a stringent background check, make them fill out a PHS, and get them licensed through TCO. TCO can set up a division for private security. DPS has a division for private security that can just roll over to TCO. That way TCO can stay on top of it, TCO can stay on top of the training academies, and we should be making the armed security guards go through an 80-hour class. They should know the laws. We should have to make them learn the laws when it comes to security guards and what they can and cannot do. We should make them go through a course on handling a weapon. They should go out there and they should take the same field of fire course that law enforcement does. They should have to know the laws. They should go through the laws and know them. They should be able to repeat the laws back to you when it comes to what they can do and what they cannot do. We had one officer, I knew of one officer that shot at someone, and I believe because the person spit at him and then got in their car and took off, the officer was shooting at him and shot the car. That's not a reason to pull your weapon as a security guard and fire. As law enforcement can't even do that. So, then that's where we're coming up with officers don't know the laws when it comes to their handling of a weapon. If we were to up it up a little bit, up the pay, up the training, up the licensing, security guards would be a whole lot better. They'd be better to work with. They'd be more professional to work with. You wouldn't have them out here in tore up, ratty uniforms, pants unhemmed, half your shirt's untucked, stains all over it, and not wearing all of your uniform. Wearing white tennis shoes with a black uniform, stuff. You would have more professional officers. You would have a better quality officer. TCO and the PHS would weed out those that are not fit to be working in private security as far as mentality, attitude, and not knowing your laws. But hey, that's just my opinion. That's something I just wanted to gripe about. For those of y'all that are wondering, no, I'm not working private security anymore. I was able to go back to work in the state jail, which is something that I was trained for. So at least I was able to get back into that since I have to go back into the workforce. I couldn't go back to work for the sheriff's department. Couldn't pass the physical for them, but I was able to make it back into the state jail. So yes, I'm going back in there. I have to get out of private security. I can't do it. My mentality just will not allow me to work private security because I would find too much I wouldn't be happy in private security because of the quality of the officers I'd have to work with. And to me, it's just, if they're not up to my standards for me to work in private security, I just can't do it. But hey, enough of that. Y'all listen to me rant and rave enough about that. So, but that's my opinion. Y'all stay safe out there, and I'll talk to y'all.